Yeah, yeah, yeah. So many lies that you hear from the net, they don't get her respect. She reporting the truth, not a check. You want an unbiased opinion straight from the chest, not a bit accomplice or someone here for a check. Tune in, these are thoughts from a lawyer on a mission who goes so hard it's like she works on commission. Trolls in the comments might say she tripping cause they lack the knowledge, they don't know they missing. Got a couple current events that you like, wanna know about law from the eyes. Tired of all these blogs running lies because their agendas are disguised. Tune in to the intellect, cause I'm sure y'all missing all the facts of the case that she steady is gifted. Someone here for the people, man, it's so uplifting. If you ain't subscribed yet, then you just omitting facts.
Good morning. It is Pam Esquire, also known as Your Law Intellect. I hope you guys are having a fantabulous Thursday. You guys know what we're here for. We are here because Sean Diddy Combs is trying to either get a new trial or persuade the judge that he should get an acquittal despite the verdict from the jury, who did find him not guilty on the most serious charges, which was the racketeering and the trafficking. However, did find him guilty for prostitution under the Mann Act, aka you pay for that's what he got convicted of. And there's some type of debate over what the word prostitution really means. What does it entail? Why, if he was convicted of that, why weren't the women that participated in it as well? Why weren't the other people? So this left a lot of questions, but we all know the history of the Mann Act. We're not going to go over that again. We're not going to be redundant, but he is currently in court right now to render this here argument. Okay, so what we will do is what we did during the trial is we're going to look at some of the tweets from Inner City Press because they are there front and center to tweet out this as it is happening. There have been a few tweets already, but you guys know we'll read through them real fast and we'll be sitting here. But yeah, so let's see what he's talked about already. Let me make sure I got the updated one. Please, y'all, make sure you hit the like button if you will be so kind. That would be so great. That would be great. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, please subscribe. I'm going to get into this debate that I was having back and forth with a no name in the comments, because apparently people just feel like I'm supposed to have their opinion. And if I don't have their opinion, I'm being paid. I was being paid by Jay-Z. I was being paid by, what's her name? Perez. I was being paid by Rock Nation. I was being paid by Diddy. Now I'm being paid by Tyler Perry. Y'all, I should be super rich. We should already be on that yacht I was talking about yesterday that we were going to do when I hit that big, that big one. I'm not being paid by, listen, I'm not being paid by anybody. I am just an attorney who have seen people that are monsters that deserve to be in prison. And I've also seen people who were accused of being a monster who were not, and it ruined their life. I have a balance in life that a lot of people don't have. I've seen people of which literally to this day, because they were falsely accused, have to carry a piece of paper in their back pocket every time somebody brings it up to show that the person recanted and they lied. They were just mad the relationship didn't work. So I come from a different lens. I come from a different perspective. And excuse me that I believe that you have to prove your case. Okay? That is the constitutional right that we have. And people just get mad because I don't think like them. Then they want to come for you just on YouTube hustling. Like, what are you talking about? First of all, some of these YouTubers, they probably make way more money than you did. Okay. Some people are multimillionaires on YouTube. I'm not saying I make millions on YouTube, but I'm saying that there is a potential of doing that if that is your full-time job. So don't knock the YouTube hustle. But nonetheless, I am a practicing attorney. All right. I have a case load. I go to court very often, almost every single day. Okay. So don't try to come for me to the low hanging fruit of I'm going to come for you in your profession and basically try to name call because I don't agree with your position. All right. Let's grow up. Let's use little bit of analytical skills. Let's just think things through. Let's look at all the evidence. And then don't come for me when you haven't watched all of my videos. Don't do that either. At least watch my videos. I just don't like when you're loud and wrong. And all you got to do is research and look at some of my videos and see some of the information that I already went over. That's all. Let me pull this up. But yeah, I had a little bit of time today because I had to go to the dentist earlier. And so I was scrolling through and I was letting people have it. I ain't have a problem with letting you have it today. You too can get it. All right. Anyway, you guys, thank you so much for listening to my rant. Make sure you hit that like button. I appreciate you. So this started about 20 minutes ago at 11:04, according to Inner City Press. Shout out to Inner City Press for always being boots on the ground and being allotted the opportunity to actually live tweet over there at the Southern District of New York Federal Court. And at 11:04, he said Combs was still in the holding cell. And then at the defense table was Alexandra Shapiro, Xavier Donaldson, Nicole Westmoreland, you know that's my girl, Brian Steele, and Agnifilo. Prosecutors were stone-faced, so they were sitting there like, yeah, we lost we lost those big 2 counts. We did. At 11:06, Sean Combs came in his MDC tan jail uniform. Now, what happened is yesterday, Diddy's team, or I think it was Agnifilo, submitted a letter and filed it to the docket of which they were asking for certain they attached a proposed order for him to have certain clothes for this hearing and next week for his sentencing. And apparently maybe the judge didn't get around to it, but it definitely wasn't signed. So I guess that is why he is in there in that tan MDC jail uniform instead of his cardigan sweaters, popping his collars and things. Sean Combs unloaded papers from his big duffel bag. So he came in and he said, this might be my big one today. He is seated between Driscoll and Brian Steele, just waiting for the judge. He was like, I got my paperwork. You got your paperwork? All right, let's get it. Let's get it cracking. All grit, no quit. Because I'm telling you, this team is, if it's possible under those rules to file something to help their client, they're doing it. They're doing exactly what they're getting paid for. So now it began 11 minutes ago. All rise. The clerk is like, appearances for the record, please. Alexander Shapiro. With us is Mark Garagos. Sorry, Tenny Garagos. Not they done messed up and said Mark Garagos. They said Mark Garagos instead of Tenny. Alexandra, it's okay. It's okay, sis. I know you guys been busy. That sentencing memo was really long. There were a lot of attachments. I understand. Sometimes it happens, sis. So then the judge says, you don't have to take the full 15 minutes if you've said all you need. Please proceed. So basically, you can get to talking. However, you ain't got to use all your time, all right? So then the government says, we point you to U.S. v. Kelly, the Second Circuit, 2025, which stands that Combs' Rule 29 argument had to have been raised pre-trial. So they're saying that their Rule 29 argument was waived, which was one of the questions the judge wanted them to address. So prior to this hearing, the judge submitted a document Apparently, both parties asked the judge, are there any specific questions that you want answers to? Because what can happen when you stand there is you start out with your nice little pretty oral argument, and the court is well versed on your case, but there are certain issues that may be your weakest issue, may be your strongest issue, that they want you to elaborate on and say, where is your authority? And so they went to the judge and said, listen, judge, if there's anything specific that you want us to focus on, because we know you've read our brief. There's an assumption that you read our briefs when they were turned in, read all of the cases associated within that brief. And so now, judge, if there is anything that you want us to specifically focus on, please let us know. So the judge did file a document and said, well, based on you guys asking what you should focus on, these are the things we would like you to focus on. The court would want you to focus on. And so one of those was whether Diddy had already waived his Rule 29 argument, because it should have been raised before trial even happened. And so according to the government, they're saying his Rule 29 argument had to have been raised pre-trial and that they've waived it. So saying that they forfeited, they can't be bringing it up now. Okay. Hold on. I wonder why they saying pre-trial though, because the motion for judgment of acquittal usually happens after the usually it's like within 14 days after the guilty verdict. So I don't know. Interesting. Judge said, let's separate out the jury instructions. You're saying that this defendant's constitutional argument should have been made at Rule 12 stage. Okay, Rule 12. All right, because I'm like, Rule 29. That's like doing a motion for a directed verdict. And that's usually after they put their case on, well, kind of like a motion notwithstanding the verdict. They've given their verdict and you're like, listen, they still didn't have enough evidence and you should acquit, and you're supposed to do that within 14 days under Rule 29. So they're saying, so the judge is clarifying and said, you're saying that this defendant's constitutional argument should have been made at Rule 12 stage. The government says that's correct. So the judge said the defense is making an as-applied argument that they can do on Rule 29. So then the government says, I want to push back on their reading of the cases. In Dennis, the defendant was arguing he couldn't be tried without infringing on the First Amendment. The parties agreed it was only about sufficiency. The judge said, but the court went right past waiver. See, they getting real deep in here. The judge, Ms. Shapiro, can you address these arguments? So they are going to have the government talk about one part of the argument and then let them address the argument just to keep it more smooth. So Shapiro says the Dennis case is on point. The court made clear that statutory construction arguments can be raised under Rule 29. Also, the Lopez case I argued. So it sounds like, to me, based on what they're saying, is they're using Rule 29, which is allowed, to raise arguments that probably should have been raised pre-trial, if that makes sense. So they're using Rule 29, which is the judgment of acquittal, in order to raise some arguments that the government is saying should not have been raised in the Rule 29, because it's really a pre-trial argument that should have been raised under a different rule before they even got to the trial. This is about to be a long day. Really classy. I don't know, classy. They trying to give him some some football numbers. That's what they're trying to give him. I thought it was going to be okay. He should be able to get out on bond right now. Give him, he's been in for a year, give him time served. Oh, no. They found every case available in this United States to try to add months and numbers to however they could. That's what they're doing. So they're asking for a number of years, and even the probation office is asking for, or the pretrial services is asking for a nice number of years as well. Who is Deontay, TJ? You said Deontay is suing, or Deontay? Are you talking about from Jodeci, like Devontae? Who is Deontay? Let me know who that is, TJ. You guys are gonna learn these rules better than they do by the time this is over with. Okay. So the judge said, let's put the financial motive to the side. Why wouldn't Mr. Combs be liable under a willfully causing theory? Ms. Ventura or Jane furnished the payment for the escorts, but Mr. Combs still had the relevant intent. No. So Shapiro said, no, absolutely not. Many states find that prostitution is only when A pays B for sex with A. Here, the government is trying to get around it. But the cases where people watch others having sex, it's not prostitution. The acts, is that ruse? In the Mann Act is transportation. Oh, the actus reus. That's what they try. I missed the actus part. The actus reus in the Mann Act is transportation. So they're arguing that typically, like I told you all in the beginning, when it comes to prostitution, it's typically someone going, in our state, well, everybody got their street in whatever state you are. Whatever city you in, everybody got their streets where it goes down, all right? So you go down there and you like, hey, then it's like they walk up to the car, $50 for a such and such, and they come in and they go in the parking lot, get it in, and then the police woo woo, because it's always a sting, it seems like, and then you get caught up in the game and get prostitution. That's what they're saying prostitution is, as we all know it. But it is not, according to Diddy's argument, it's not them watching. So a lot of the times in this situation, we heard during the trial that Jane Doe and Cassie, they paid for the escorts themselves. Sometimes they picked out who they liked. And they had intercourse and Diddy just watched. We didn't hear any testimony of him being a participant except with the females he had a relationship, i.e. Cassie and Jane Doe. So that is what their argument is that he should have got acquitted because they don't have any facts to actually show prostitution as to what we define prostitution as. And they went back, I think, to the 1800s in their memo as to what prostitution was considered. You know what? Cheryl said, Pam, do you think this is the government's way for not giving a guilty verdict on the RICO charge? I feel they're kind of going above and beyond to try to put them in prison for a long time because they lost. But that's just my opinion. They're not used to being on the L side. Does it happen? Yes, it does happen. But a lot of the times, again, they have a high conviction rate because a lot of people plea. They don't even want to go and box up against the government. But now you had, and this was the case why I continuously said it's going to be interesting to watch someone with the same resources as the government be able to go up against them. And I'm not saying, of course, the government got billions of dollars, but it's not all allocated towards them trying cases. So they have this unlimited, seems like, amount. They can get with whoever they want. They can get whatever expert they want. They can get whatever PIs they want, forensics. They always have that ability to do so, which puts them above. But when you go against someone who has the same amount of resources that they can get an expert to counter your expert, they can get forensics to counter your forensics, they can afford 8 lawyers on their team to divide up the work to make sure there is no piece of discovery, no piece of evidence that is overlooked. They can hire someone that can look at thousands of hours, will listen to thousands of hours of audio from wiretaps. He can hire someone that has the time to view those nasty videos that they said were being recorded. Just imagine one person getting a case like Diddy's case. It would have been a lot to handle, and that happens more often than not. So now you had a situation where it was more evenly on both sides. And look what happened, which lets you know that sometimes some of these people are probably losing just because they don't have the right resources. They don't have the same amount of resources. So yeah. Queen Shadina said, what? The government is dislocating the shoulder with some of its reach. Oh, they gonna try. They're like, listen, in 1755, this happened on this case. Before this happened, they probably gonna go to the crown. Before the United States was even here. I mean, they gonna do what they gotta do. I mean, listen. Thank you, Cheryl, for the super chat. I appreciate that. Make sure y'all hit the like button on the way in. Rod said they want to give him football numbers for basically watching live porn. That's all that happened. If this is the case, every swinger nudist resort needs to be shut down. Yeah, and it's interesting because the place that provided the escorts, again, they say that they provide companionship. That's it. If you choose to get it in, they're all adults. So it's nothing they can really do, even though they probably know their people are having relations. Like you said, there are swingers clubs out here. And just because it's not your cup of tea doesn't mean that it's not a cup of tea for other people. You will be surprised. Well, it's none of our business what people do in their bedroom. But there are people that this is their lifestyle. It's a lot of people with the Diddy case that I know got nervous. They probably like, so what? It's a lucrative business. I mean, in order to have swingers clubs, you have to have people that are like-minded. So there are more people that are like-minded than people want to recognize. Hey, Sherman, good to see you. You said, I don't understand Diddy love. We can normalize the degeneracy. Let him date your sisters and daughters then. Should I, Pam? Should I? Is it too early? Okay, I'm going to be nice. Kind of. First of all, much better 2 days. I don't understand where you're getting Diddy love from. At least have authority for when you make these types of comments. Nobody is normalizing anything. These were adults who did some of this stuff. If this is the case, you should be out here with picket lines for everybody that has been abused. To me, the domestic violence was the worst part of this. Abusing women, how it was done on the video. There was no explanation for that. The DV, no explanation for that. There are thousands of people getting beat up every day. And the government ain't going after them like this and replaying videos. So I'm going to need you to go and pick it and take all of your misplaced anger and whatever happened to you in your life. Go out there and pick it for those people that aren't a Diddy, that don't have a name. Okay, that's the first thing I want you to do. Let him date your sister or daughter then. I can't let anything happen. because my daughters, except for my 7-year-old, is an adult. All right, she can date who she wants to. My sisters are adults. They can date who they want to. So your whole comment is stupid. That's all I'm saying. But that's it. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna say nothing else because then y'all be talking about I'm mean. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just trying to point out the obvious in this situation. Tracy said, "Welcome to Pammy Pam's Legal Theater. The show today, Diddy bopping at the Superior Court. If you like how Pam delivered the information, please like up the live." I really thought about that for a minute. I didn't say the first thought that came to my head. This took a lot of work. This took a lot of inner work for me to get like this. I didn't do that. I'm just saying, I don't think anybody is up in here in this chat just like, "Ooh, Diddy's my favorite." In fact, a lot of people acknowledged in the beginning, I was one of them, that I didn't like how people appeared to portray to be treated on television. Diddy may be a whole different person now. I don't know him from a can of paint. Again, people say he's a great father. He had a lot of letters that came in. He may be all of that. But when it came to relationships, he was not the best person. We can all agree to that. Huh? We can all agree with that. There are some men that you know that are great fathers and they are horrible spouses. There are a lot of women that have, and men, that mothers and fathers that have created unhealed children. Those unhealed children go and they go ruin other people's lives. Okay? We all know that. That is not what we're here for. This is not a psychology course. We are here to talk about this case and whether the Mann Act counts that he was charged of, if that he should be acquitted or get a new trial. That's what we here for. We not here about whether we feel like he good for our mamas, he good for our daughters, we love him. It's not even relevant at all to what we're talking about. And to pull that out is just, I just want to say something so that I could be disruptive and combative in the chat. That's what it's giving. That's all. Anyway, Miss LaShonda said, "I think a lot of people are blurring the lines between law, morals, and personal preference. The law is the same. Morals and preference are different for everyone." Yes, and morals is subjective. Some people, for me, a covenant and a marriage is not just a piece of paper. Why? Because I know the biblical definition of marriage. Well, what a covenant is biblically, not even just in marriage, just in your word before God and what it means. Some people think it's just a piece of paper. That's why they have open marriages. That's why they don't mind banging their neighbor and sharing their wives. That's why they don't mind. But who am I? Who am I? People have their own consciousness, they have their own moments in life that shapes who they are, and they develop, and some people are growing, some people are learning, and this world is a journey. It's not a canvas that it's already painted for us to see. Maybe a canvas for God because he knows the beginning and the end, but for us it is literally a journey day by day, and people are going to try different things that I may not try. I may try things that they may not try. But who am I to say what you're doing is wrong because of your lens? And then most of the people, they're based their morals on the American Christianity, which is a whole nother topic. Because you guys know the same people that was putting black people on blocks so they can sell them and beat them, humiliate and embarrass them in front of their family will go to church on Sunday right after they did it. So I just want people just to sit back and breathe and just think. Everybody's not going to be like you. This world will totally be boring if it was. But y'all got me off on something totally different, okay? All right. Y'all done gave me a headache. Hold on. Let me blow this candle out. Maybe this is affecting me too. Okay. We're back. All right, y'all. And again, y'all don't have to agree with me. Listen. My mantra is if I can't believe what I say myself, then I don't really believe it. I don't need co-signers. I don't need none of that. I believe what I believe based on my experience, my studying, whatever my belief is. But I can believe everything I can believe by myself. That means I'm not going to ever get on the internet and make you try to think like me. The only thing I can do is tell you how I think and how I got to that conclusion. So the thing about me that's a little bit different than a lot of people is I will show you and tell you why I analyze things and get to the conclusion that I get. A lot of people on the internet and in this chat, well, I'm not going to say a lot because most of y'all are really, really smart, but there's conclusory statements. That means you come to a conclusion with nothing else to get to that conclusion. So it's just a conclusory allegation or a conclusory statement with no support to back up what you said. My job that I think it is on here is to say, listen, it's cool to have a opinion, but what made you get to that opinion? That's it. Let's go on. Shapiro said commercial voyeurism is not prostitution. A number of states say. There's the Paulino case in New York and the Georgia case. The government had alleged that a private residence had been used for prostitution, but the court said, no, it's voyeurism. So then Shapiro goes on to say the statute originally had a section about debauchery, which was excised later. That is true. The original Mann Act statute talked about debauchery, and debauchery, they use that word because, again, they let it be subjective on those states and the people who are running the states on what they felt was debauchery or immoral. So that's where you had the situation where it's illegal for you to go in a state of which you can't have interracial relationships, but then you go into that state and now you're arrested under the Mann Act because in their state that was immoral and that falls under debauchery. So it was such a general term. It was very subjective on what the meaning of debauchery means. The Supreme Court reversed a Seventh Circuit holding that had affirmed a conviction where the defendants did not have a commercial motive. So then Shapiro says traveling interstate for a woman being a mistress or a concubine, and the judge must have cut her off, and said the Cleveland case said polygamy met the immoral purposes test. So there's a case apparently called Cleveland, of which they said polygamy met the immoral test. So over there with Sister Wives in them, remember when Sister Wives, the show, y'all may not know, but there's a show called Sister Wives. Well, basically none of them married no more. Y'all know how reality TV does that. The polygamy people couldn't even hold on after they TV got a hold of them. But they were when they started their polygamy, they got ran out of their state, and because it was illegal. So they were going to other states so that they could practice their religion. Because I think theirs was more religious based, but now ain't none of them together. You know, one of them, Christine, got married. I think Mary, she finally found out that Cody didn't want her. So she left and she's doing her thing. Robin was the last wife, and that's who he's with, who everybody thought that was who he wanted to be with. That was his soulmate anyway. And all the wives got jealous and all of that. So they still got a show. I don't know how nobody's married, but they still got a show. And yeah, that's that. So they're saying, the judge is saying that the Cleveland case said polygamy met the immoral purposes test. So Shapiro said, respectfully, I disagree. Shapiro said, respectfully, Judge, I don't read that the way you're reading it. There was a late 19th century case about immigration. So then Shapiro says, all of the federal constitutional law that developed around privacy of sexual relations, the judge cut him off and said, Miss Foster. So then the government came up, AUSA Foster said, this case is different from where a person in a booth watches people have sex. Combs is challenging the term prostitution. So apparently there must have been a case. Look, we got to read between the lines. We're not looking up all these cases. There must have been a case of which the court must have said that it was voyeurism and not prostitution when a person, you know how they had those peep shows? Some of y'all always wonder what that was when you was little and you went by the building and they said, come on in, 25 cents for a peep show. So apparently this must have been a case about a peep show and they said that that's not prostitution. So the government is like, this is not what we're talking about. It's different. It's different when a person is in a booth watching than I guess a person is off in the corner. Remember they said Diddy had a mask on and he's sitting there like directing like, yeah, to the left, to the left, to the right. No. Stop. Slow down. You going too fast. They said he was directing. He was over in the corner being a director. So then AUSA Foster says, here the women helped arrange the transportation of the escorts. So for the defendant, it's aiding and abetting. But they wasn't accused. They wasn't charged with that. The judge said, you're saying they had the intent, they paid the money, they had the sex, that is willfully caused? Shapiro said, may I respond? This is interesting. So then the judge said, I'll give you time at closing, Miss Slavic. So then AUSA Slavic gets up and says, the record does not show that every time an escort traveled and had sex that the sex act was filmed. They only say, quote, routinely filmed. He frequently filmed freak-offs or hotel nights, but not all the time. So this must be their First Amendment argument on freedom of speech. All right. So that was another argument they had, was that it's a violation of his freedom of speech because he's there and his point is almost like being a porn flick, like somebody said, and he's recording. And so you're basically punishing him for sitting in the back and recording. He didn't participate. So now the government is saying, well, he didn't record every time. He only recorded some of the time. So then the government said the explicit video charts show that there was travel for sex, but sometimes there were no videos recovered for those encounters. We can pull up the exhibits. The judge said, you argue that even if they were filmed, it wouldn't matter? And the government was like, right. The Mann Act criminalizes travel for prostitution, not filming sex. The test for symbolic speech is whether there is an intent to convey a meaning. The transportation conveys no message. So there is no symbolic speech here. So the government is focusing on criminalizing the travel for prostitution, them coming from other spots in order to come and engage in these relations. Diddy's team is saying that this is freedom of speech. In O'Brien, the protected symbolic speech was the burning of draft cards. Here, transportation is not symbolic speech. The judge said, if a movie producer is making pornographic films, are you saying the First Amendment is not implicated? And the government said, oh, that's a closer call. So the judge said, if a movie producer is making pornographic films, are you saying the First Amendment is not implicated? And their response was just, oh, that's a closer call. So basically, like, yeah, I guess it could kind of be implicated. It could not. They weren't just going to directly say, yeah. So then the government said, in the other cases cited, the producer said, when they transport it, we'll be filming a movie. Here, he only intended the individuals to engage in prostitution. The defendant there was not an amateur porn producer. The defendant here was not an amateur porn producer. So they're saying that when the traveling occurred in those cases of which there was pornographic filming, that was the purpose. They said, listen, we're going to Vegas, we're going to the Bunny Ranch, and we're about to film it. Like that was what the purpose was. What they're saying is Diddy's purpose was not just to film it. His purpose was to actually watch it, pay for it, so this sexual relations can happen, is what they're arguing. Now, what is interesting is during the trial, if you guys can recall, Jane did testify that he recorded it so that they could have nights of which they can just watch themselves do it. So I'm sure that's going to come up because she even bought him a little portable television with, I guess, a space to put the DVD in so that he can travel and have it with him so that they can watch it. So they would even have a freak off or a hotel night, I think is what Jane Doe called it. Cassie called it a freak off. Or you're going to have a movie night. And the movie night was them watching their own porn. So this is interesting. What you guys saying? Mo Better said immunity is bull. Give everyone else a pass so we can get this one person that's trash. Everyone broke the law. So you're not a fan of those proffer agreements, huh? Kelly said that's pornography, though. Rod said, what is the government saying? So Diddy aided and abetted Cassie and Jane. That means Cassie and Jane were the principal who violated the Mann Act. That's what it was given to me, Rod. But I'm like, huh? So they engaged in the prostitution because they called, right? They called him to come. They paid him. But he assisted because he may have given them the money or reimbursed the money back. So he aided and abetted, and they the principals, and you just a but everybody got immunity though. That is interesting. That was an interesting argument. I didn't think that the government would say anything remotely like that. You get me said, I think we need to decriminalize prostitution if everyone is consenting adults. Listen, it's people giving it up for free, I guess. I guess you get me, shoot. Folk giving it up for nothing. They probably wish they would have got paid. I probably shouldn't have said that. I'll take that back. But yeah, there are some spots, one spot maybe in Nevada or something, I think people said, where there's some type of where it's not criminalized, but I think the trafficking portion of it is more of a problem when you get young people off of the street and they have these pimps and you beating them up and making them have sex. I think that's where the government was trying to go with a lot of this. Like when you look at the Jane Doe, the one violent incident that she alleges happened, and of course it was after the Cassie lawsuit and she hit Diddy first. It was alleged that he made her do a freak off after that. So that's where they was trying to get the trafficking in. like you coerced by violence or force, you made her have sex after the fact, of which the jury did not agree. They didn't agree with that interpretation of what happened. That's why he was not convicted of trafficking. But yeah, I can see trafficking. It seems like they might be blurring the lines somewhat with prostitution and trafficking. So with trafficking, yeah, they need to probably be up under somebody's jail to be pimping out people and immigrants and younger kids and all of that. But prostitution, I do think that's a closer call in my government voice. That's a close call. Uh, let's see. Decker Shaw. Yeah, that's what I know I'm behind on the chat. Um, everybody pretty much had immunity from my understanding. Hey, really be. Rod said, what is the government? Oh, I keep saying that, like looking at yours over and over again. Okay, let me see. Let me go back down here to the more recent. Mafa Girl said, Pam, how can you traffic a dog who is willing to go? I wish I had all the answers. I don't have the answer. I don't know. Well, they try to say manipulation and control. I think it's the same arguments, which we're going to go over too. The case with Michelle Bannon from the David E. Taylor case that's here in Michigan. They always, I'm not gonna say always because that's too inclusive, but a lot of times they'll say that it was manipulation and control. So were they willing? Because that's what the government was trying to say. It was the control. So with Cassie, they were saying he held up her album, he stopped her career. With Jane, remember they were saying he was the one that was paying her rent, he was the one that was financing her. So she would basically be homeless. And with Cassie, she wouldn't have a career. So this is what they'll use to say that it's not even, they're not, even though it appears that they are willing participants, they aren't really willing participants because they are somehow being controlled. That is how they get around that. Now, I think that that's where you need psychologists to come in. And I don't necessarily agree with some of the stuff. And I didn't go to school for it, but I just my common sense. I feel like a lot of women, in order to avoid accountability, can say I was manipulated or controlled, especially in this, which again we'll go over. Michelle Bannon is trying to get out. She's detained right now. She's the co-defendant for David E. Taylor, and the first thing that I knew was going to be in there is like I knew it. I was like, she's gonna somehow say she's a victim like everybody else. That is what the fallback was, is that I was controlling, I was being controlled and victimized like everybody else. So I was doing it to other people because I was under the control of David E. Taylor. So you get how that goes. It's kind of like a never-ending cycle, and you don't know what is valid, what's not valid, what is I'm just trying to get out of trouble, and what's not, so I don't know. You said in Reno, Nevada, prostitution is legal. Okay. Kelly says she couldn't get a job. So with Jane, she was working before she met Diddy, and she had an apartment in New York. And the same thing with Cassie, and it wasn't any shade. Cassie just, I think when she got with her boyfriend that helped her get on with that You and Me, that was her sweet spot. You know how sometimes you'll hear artists and they work with a certain person and you're like, boy, they get their voice. And so all the music comes out. They may not be the greatest singer, but all the music that comes out, you're like, okay, that's bopping. But when you leave them and go someplace else and work with just regular random producers, you kind of realize they're not as talented as you thought they were. That's what it felt like with me with Cassie. I think Cassie had the look. Her ex-boyfriend told in an interview how she blew up was basically he had a connected with MySpace. So she blew up on MySpace first. He shocked her on foot, going to different clubs and making sure that it played over and over again till it got in your head. Like that's how she came, or how people knew her. Then the deal happened with Diddy, and then a couple years later, Diddy ended up with her. So, in my opinion, I mean, and that came out in some of the testimony too. I just didn't think she was the most talented person, but that's again my opinion. She has her following of people that like her as well. So before that, she did modeling. She was supposedly, I guess, on in Times Square on billboards and stuff. So she was a great model. So yeah, she could have done that as well. I think she liked the lifestyle of Diddy and she got used to the lifestyle of Diddy. I mean, you got somebody coming over to put your makeup on. You got somebody doing your hair, somebody picking out your clothes. You on yachts, you're on red carpets. I think she liked the lifestyle. And so she wanted to continue with that lifestyle, which is partially why she was with him. I'm not saying she ain't love him, but I'm saying I think we know she did have an end game of trying to be his wife, because that's what upset her when she finally left him after being with him for years, was because he made a post, I guess, about Kim being his soulmate. And she's like, I've done everything you wanted me to do. I've been around. And then finally, I think she realized at that moment that what she wanted in life, which is probably what she has now, which is a loving husband and kids, was not what Diddy was willing to give her. Okay, let's see what else is going on here. The judge said, if we get to O'Brien, what is the important governmental interest? The government said there is a substantial governmental interest in regulating prostitution. 47 U.S. 697 and 86 case, the court declined to apply O'Brien because the act had nothing to do with speech. So then the government said Justice Souter in dissent said he would have applied O'Brien, but even he agreed that regulating prostitution is an important government interest on laws against nude dancing. Court finds secondary impacts important. Then the government, AUSA Slavic, said there are reasons to regulate prostitution. See erotic services provider A80 Federal 3rd 450, which is a Ninth Circuit case, 2018, and that's in California over there. About a California prostitution law. It's to prevent violence against women and for health. All 50 states regulate prostitution to different degrees. So this would answer the question of the person in the chat that was like, well, why can't prostitution be legal? The government is saying the reason why states have an interest in regulating it is to prevent violence. That's what I was saying about the pimps, how they beat them up and all of that, and or them going to different places and thinking it's just going to be a one and done, and the person is crazy and they beat them up. Or they come and they say, we ain't got the $50, and then they just take it from them. So that's like one of the situations that you hear a lot where prostitutes don't report when they are raped, because people look at them like, well, you was there to get it in. I mean, what's the problem? Or they feel like people aren't going to listen to them. So the government is saying that the state's regulation, the purpose that they have is because they feel like it is to prevent violence and for health reasons. Because what they do is they do make you get tested when you get swept up off the street. They do make you get tested for various diseases and whatnot. The government further says the federal interest kicks in for transportation interstate or internationally. The Barnes case found that requiring pasties for dancing was okay. So they done pulled up a case at a nude club or a strip club of which someone wanted they require pasties, and somebody must have said, I don't want to be free. I don't want any pasties. And the government said that it was okay. I mean, the case found, or the court found in that case, that requiring them to have pasties for dancing was okay. So the judge says, Miss Shapiro on the First Amendment. And Miss Shapiro said it was filmed the majority of the time. All right. It was filmed most of the time. So then Shapiro says, just because the footage wasn't found doesn't matter. The U.S. has ignored our second First Amendment argument that he was a consumer, excuse me, of amateur porn. As to being a producer, amateur porn is protected by the First Amendment. This is really a very interesting argument. Then Shapiro says at trial, they emphasized that it was choreographed, that there was role playing in wigs. They did do that, Shapiro. You're right. It was filmed, so it's covered by the First Amendment. But Mr. Combs also had a right as a consumer of amateur porn. See Free Speech Coalition versus Paxton. It's interesting. Y'all have to admit, this is a very interesting argument. Toria said it's legal in Vegas. They have different places they go to, like the Bunny Ranch. They make them get tested and all that. It's in Nevada. I don't think it's actually in Las Vegas. Even though if you walk down the strip, they do got like business cards. Because I remember walking down there, want to have a fun time. They like passing out cards. I was like, what? I've never seen anything like this before. But yeah. Killer Rob said that kid Cuddy BS should not have been included in the case. Well, they had to see whatever, they had to throw up whatever they could against the wall and see what stick. After a while, you can tell that a lot of this was to besmirch his image and just make you not like him. They were hoping, just like the outrage of some people that have been on the internet, of that there are some people that legit say they had interactions with him and they worked with him and he treated them bad. There are people that have said that. But there are also people that just don't like Diddy based off what other people have said he's done. So, so yeah. I think that if you felt like you can get a jury that was consuming, like we all saw the video. That's why they played that video over and over again, even though he wasn't being charged with domestic violence. They were trying to tie it in, and to me, it wasn't a tie-in. It was just an excuse to get it in, to say that this happened after a freak off, like she was trying to leave, which would go towards trafficking. That's how they were able to get it in. Other than that, you guys saw how the defense was fighting profusely to try to get it out. Because if you watch it over and over again, there is no way as a human being you're not going to be pissed seeing her get kicked. You don't know the backstory. We don't know what happened beforehand. For all we know, she could have bust him upside the head with a vase or something. We don't know. All we saw was what we saw in the public, and it's inflammatory and it's very prejudicial. And so I think a lot of the stuff that was entered in, that's why I said if he was convicted, I think that he has a lot of appealable issues, especially on some of the evidence that was allowed in, because a lot of it just had nothing to do with what the case was about. It was a lot of other bad acts that were entered in. In fact, it feels like it was more bad acts than actual evidence for the crime that you're saying he committed. So yeah. Rod said, per what the prosecution said in their tactical case, regardless, the defense is using the prosecution's own arguments against them. Beautiful. But see, that's exactly, Rod, what was used against the defense when they tried to get Diddy out on bond. Remember, Agnifilo said, we concede he was violent. He beat her. I mean, it was nothing else you can do. It was on the video. At that time, he was in a bad place. He has mental health challenges. That was a part of his sentencing memo as well. It was extensive. They redacted the precise diagnoses, but we know that a diagnosis was blurted out, I think, by Cassie at one point. But we don't know the precise diagnoses, but he was on a bunch of medication apparently, and he was taking drugs. And according to their expert, the medication he was on was a bit excessive. So that was a problem. And then he was on drugs. So that was a problem. And it was all mixing up. So, hey, Dr. Jonathan, good to see you. And so what happened is the prosecution, when they said that about the violence and he's not a danger to the community, the judge actually said, you, the attorney, admitted that he was violent in your closing. Like, that's what the prosecution used. And so they used them on them. And so it's good to see that the defense is using them on them. So yeah. Yeah, I don't necessarily think he's gonna acquit him. I'll be shocked. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I'll be very shocked. It's possible. Is it probable? I don't know. But if I were to guess, I would think he's gonna be at that sentencing next week. But hey. All right. So Shapiro said Jane even bought a TV so they could watch the videos together. Didn't I just tell y'all that? See what I'm saying? The judge said, how does that apply to the transportation count? She said, if the intent included filming and watching later. The judge says, so not prostitution if it's recorded and watched later. That's the First Amendment argument. They're saying that it was recorded for purposes of watching it later. So then Shapiro said, you wouldn't have to find this. This is a unique case. The judge said Ms. Slavic pointed out the government's other interests, including transportation across state lines. Shapiro said, you have to look at the conduct of this defendant. The judge said, they say drug use. Judge is giving them the business right now. Shapiro said the only drug charge here was in the RICO charge of which Mr. Combs was acquitted. Tell him, Shapiro. DOJ policy doesn't even say what Ms. Slavic says. It says the statute should only be used on prostitution as a business or the trafficking of minors. So the DOJ has their own policy of which they tell them you shouldn't bring it. It's not that you can't, but they know that it's a lot of cases out here. So there are certain cases that they want you to bring. And apparently when it comes to this, they don't want you to bring the Mann Act prostitution unless it's a business. Like this is what they're doing and legit making millions, probably because they're not paying no taxes on them too. So they want to bring those, or if it involves minors. So technically they went against their own policy when they brought it, is the argument. But again, this is just a guide. It's not like it's the law, but they're using their policy on them to say, your own policy says that you shouldn't bring it under these circumstances. Just Lisa said he's going to get some jail time, just my opinion. Amanda said, I think they'll get the sentencing overturned on appeal. Okay. My for girls said the judge is going to give him the most he can, I believe, but it ain't right. I think I'm kind of leaning with you guys, man. At first I really thought that he was really, really fair. But then when I listened to, and maybe I would need the whole transcript because again, I'm going by tweets. When I listened to how he analyzed the whole bail situation, it really sounded like Diddy is not his favorite person. This is my opinion. This is what it was giving. That he is not his favorite person. And he kept kind of reiterating, this has nothing to do with his sentencing, though. This is just for bond purposes. This is not going to affect his sentencing. And he said that a few times. And so I'm not convinced. So I agree with you on that one. So the judge says, those were my questions, Miss Shapiro. So then Shapiro said, I believe Miss Foster said the two women testified they were paying for prostitution. We must have been in a different trial. Miss Shapiro, okay. I don't remember either women saying they were involved in prostitution. So the judge said, let me ask you, a businessman takes one of his clients to a brothel and pays a prostitute to have sex with his client. That's not prostitution? Shapiro said, was he a voyeur as well? Basically, Shapiro said, I'm going to need more facts, Judge. You're hypothetical. I'm going to need more facts than what you're saying. So the judge gives a hypo and says, a businessman, and you guys can tell me, do you think this is prostitution? Put yes if you guys think it's prostitution in the chat, or no. This is the hypothetical the judge gave Miss Shapiro. A businessman takes one of his clients to a brothel and pays a prostitute to have sex with his clients. Remember, we just talked about brothels over there in Nevada. Is that prostitution? So if I take my client over to a brothel and pay somebody to get it in with him at the brothel, is that considered prostitution? Andrew said yes. Martha Girl said no. Just Lisa said yes. Okay. Chapel Hill said no. Johnny said no. Peachy, oh, y'all split, huh? Yes. Toya said exactly. Companies have done that for years, especially foreign clients, to get happy endings. They have. If the brothel is legal, like in Nevada, then no. That's a good point, Kelly. That's what I was wondering. Are brothels legal? Or are they only in places like Nevada, of which there's nothing illegal about it? I'm not that familiar with the brothel. You said no. Okay, y'all split on that. That's interesting. You said no. What if the brothel serves as a buffet? Let me look that up. I'm not that familiar with the brothel. Are brothels legal? Nevada is the sole exception where some counties permit and regulate licensed brothels. Why I went straight to Michigan? Like, no, not in Michigan. I know that. Chat GPT, I know that. Google. They like, ma'am, you in Michigan. It's a no. You going to jail. Nevada exceptions. Licensed brothels are permitted in some Nevada counties. Other jurisdictions, prostitution and operating a brothel are illegal in every other U.S. state and territory. That would have been my response. I'd have been like, are we in Nevada? That would have been a good response. Are we in Nevada or are we in other states? Because the brothel's not illegal in other states. What are we talking about here? But her response was basically, well, is he just going to watch? Because if he's just going to watch, then no. Is there voyeurism, meaning that I'm paying you to have sex in the brothel and I'm just watching? Because if I'm just watching, then that means that no, because that's their argument, is that all Diddy was doing was watching. He just wanted a live, and he wanted it live. He didn't want it on video. And then if he wanted on video, he'll record it just in case he can't get it live, and he'll watch it on video. But his preference seemed to be he wanted to see it live. So then Shapiro says the Mann Act has racist origins. We all know that. Even 100 years ago, the statute was being criticized by many Supreme Court justices. Many juries refused to enforce it. This statute is embarrassing to the U.S. I submit respectfully. You know what else is embarrassing, Shapiro? The fact that we weren't even included in the United States Constitution at first. That's embarrassing too. It's a lot of embarrassing moments in U.S. history. The fact that the only reason why Abraham Lincoln even considered abolishing slavery was because they was getting beat up. And they needed us. Because see, the thing about us is that people of different, non-melanin people, they see how great we are before we do. Because there's no way that you would go through these type of lengths to try to drag us, dog us, make us hate ourselves, and even use Christianity against us, unless you see things in us that we don't see. See, every room that we step in, we change. That's why they're like, oh, they invented that. Oh, they invented that. Oh, they invented that. So we were more of a threat because of the intellect that we have than anything. So a lot of this stuff in this here United States of America is because it's embarrassing. All right. It's very embarrassing. So I agree with you on that, Shapiro. And respectfully, you did it very respectfully. So then Shapiro said, Mr. Combs should be acquitted of the Mann Act counts. Thank you. So then the government said the purpose of the Mann Act has no impact on First Amendment activities. The arguments about DOJ policy, those have been argued before. There was a motion to dismiss, denied. So then the government says they claim there should be no concern about secondary effects because it was behind closed doors. But that's the point. Miss Ventura was being punched and kicked. See, they're going to always bring up that video. Judge, let me redirect you to this video that he wasn't even convicted of. Let me redirect you to. You see how you play on how we all pissed about that video? We all pissed about the video. The defendant has the burden to show that the evidence was not sufficient. They can't do it. So that's their closing. That's what they're in right now, is their closing. Make sure y'all hit the like button for me. I appreciate it. How is the person that paid held accountable, but not the person who engaged in the act? Mo, better you ask some questions I don't have to answer to. Really B said, like I tell my students, American history is ugly and I don't whitewash it. That's why they trying to take all them books off the schools. Why do you think they're trying so hard to erase history? And that's why it baffled me with the Charlie Kirk. No, I can't say his name. That's what was baffling about me about everyone arguing. I talked about it a little bit in my membership. It was baffling me because the Christian and people that are claiming to be Christians, first of all, the definition of Christianity is so different depending on who you talk to. That's why people are like, are you a Christian? I'm like, what is your definition of a Christian? Because like I said earlier, I don't believe Christianity entails you humiliating Black people in front of their wives and their children. And then let me tell you, this is what kind of made me mad about the whole situation too. So the little clips that he had where he was talking about 50% of the Blacks, this was one of the arguments. 50% of Black people are in prison, even though we make up 13% of the population. and said the reasoning why 50% statistically is because a lot of us come from broken homes, saying that Black men don't take care of their kids. So my problem with the whole entire statement and why people are out here going so hard about them is because broken homes originated from y'all snatching us from our homes, taking us to this country. The origination of a broken home came from slavery, of which you guys started. Like, how do you snatch people from their homes, force women to raise their own children, create the trauma that is in our bloodline for broken homes? Then when slavery is abolished, find ways under the Black code to still put us in prison, and then have an argument that somehow we are less than, we are a menace because of what you created as far as broken homes in prison. Somebody help me understand this whole logic that was being spit out that people thought was so great. Then people are fighting about American Christianity is totally different than following Christ. It's two different things. Y'all fighting over American Christianity, but yet and still you see what it is premised on. Always look at the foundation of it. Why are y'all fighting over what the Christianity he's talking about? It was just confusing to me that I was like, I'm not getting into that. I'm not getting into that fight because it ain't worth fighting for. We're dividing. The Black church was divided on it. You talking about them. You talking about them. It was all in the pulpit. And everybody talking about everything but Jesus on Sunday morning. You talking about this. I would have paid that whole situation dust if I was a pastor. Because what am I talking about it for? Then they talked about you bad because you didn't talk about it. It's just, it was such, I don't know. Anyway. I don't know. I can't stand stuff like that. It's like, that's why you have to teach your children the real history, because you start buying into this. There is a reason, and I want each and every one of you guys to know there are of any type of melanated skin of any type, any minority. There is a reason why people fight so hard to make you feel like you are trash. There is a reason. It's because you are way better, and they hope to beat you down enough for you to believe you don't deserve what you have. You don't deserve to be a doctor. You don't deserve to be a lawyer. You don't deserve to be a millionaire. That's supposed to be favor. No, that's supposed to be what we're supposed to have because we're very smart. That's why you take off. The White House that you living in right now the architect was who? Greatness comes from us. And because the greatness comes from us, that is the reason why people fight so hard. And DEI, the purpose of DEI is not to allow unqualified Black people to be in these positions. The purpose of DEI is to prevent unqualified white people from taking the jobs from qualified Black people. Okay? That is the purpose. That was the purpose of affirmative action. You let people that are not qualified because of their skin color or because their name was not Shaniqua, who came from Harvard, you would let them take them jobs and they're not qualified. That's the purpose of DEI. But y'all done made me go off on a tangent. Let me see what's happening in this case. All right. It's probably over. I done got into DEI and everything else. All right. So we talk about the Mann Act being racist. Okay. The government said they claim there should be no concern about secondary effects because it was behind closed doors. But that's the point. Miss Ventura was being punched and kicked. The defendant has the burden to show that the evidence was not sufficient. They can't do it. Cassie and Jane both testified, although they didn't want to be having sex with others, but they had to for days. He planned them. He choreographed them for his own pleasure. If the escort couldn't perform, he was paid less. This went on for 15 years. The evidence is sufficient. The defendant's motion should be denied. The judge said, thank you. Thank you very much. Anything about sentencing? If the motion is not granted? Yeah, you had to add that because it sounds like you letting us know it's going to be a sentencing next week. Shapiro said no. Judge said, I'll decide soon. Adjourned. So that is the end of the hearing for today. Kelly said, yes, my mom gave me and my siblings more generic names so we wouldn't be turned down for jobs. I want to name my kids African names. Yeah, but that's where Pamela came from. My sibling is Pamela. Well, between my mom and dad is Pamela, Jennifer, Marvin, and Stephen. Okay, take a guess on what we are. Take a guess. But anyway. DEI is a scam. Mostly white women and women of color benefit from DEI. I don't know, because they said that about Ketanji Brown Jackson. She has got to be one of the most brilliant people ever to walk the face of this earth, the Supreme Court justice. She deserves that seat. Now, when you get to another justice over there, I'm not naming no names because I might have to stand before them one day, but they're not as bright. I'm just saying we have to work way harder in order to get in those positions, and some people have to work way less or know who they know, and we have to create legacy that we don't have because we're already behind the 8 ball. A lot of these people are getting positions based off name recognition. We don't have name recognition. We have to make our name recognition. We have a responsibility for legacy and to focus on legacy. We know certain names, just like here in Michigan, it's certain names we know when people run as judges, and it's almost like they're ingrained in our head. Even people that aren't in the judicial system, they will know, oh, I've seen that name before, and they'll just vote because of that. Why? They have legacy last names because they daddy, granddaddy, great-great-granddaddy, everybody was a lawyer. But yet we still have certain cities in Michigan where they've never had a black judge before. A couple of years ago, we just had one in Macomb County for the first time. So we still have firsts here with black people, and it's not from lack of qualification. Some of the most brilliant people, brilliant minds I have ever sat at the table with have been black people. I mean, that's just what it is. And you're not going to make me hate myself. You're just not. And I'm not going to argue with nobody about it because I know, like I said earlier, the thing about your belief is if you really believe it, you don't need a cosigner. You can believe it all by yourself. Yeah. So anyway, that was the hearing. As always, we had great conversation in between. He wasn't lying about the black community. History may happen, but what our community still doing, we can't take criticism when it comes from other races. That's not true. I need you to read a couple books, okay? Just a couple. He's not right about our community. And as a person that does wrongful convictions, and the fact that they do it, most of them kind of have a similar background. They're young and all of that. See, I told Dev the other day, I said, I understand why now the Bible says love your neighbor as yourself. And that's the problem too. The Bible is meant for application, not for you to just be arguing back and forth about what it says and what it means and blah, blah, blah. Apply it to your everyday life. That's what it's for. It's not just for emergencies. It's not just for when you're sick. It's not just for when you broke. It's not just for when you just, like, the relationship that you have with God is supposed to be an ongoing thing, and you're supposed to apply it. When it says love your neighbor as yourself, it's because we love ourselves so much that we don't care what our neighbor is going through. This is what I said about wrongful conviction, why to me it was more purposeful for me and made me want to get up in the morning and be a lawyer. Because no, I have not had that happen in my family where somebody was wrongfully convicted, but I can see somebody else's mother's tears and say, I have the wherewithal and God has blessed me and skilled me to be able to help you, and I don't even know you from a can of paint. And that's the problem. We don't care about nobody else unless it affects us. Don't get that mentality. That is the problem with the Black community. Like, we can't just care about things that don't affect us. You should care about everything that affects everyone. And that's what makes us stronger. The division is what has caused us problem, is the division that we have. We're not going to all agree on everything. As you guys see, we all have differences of opinions, and that's okay. And that's what makes this beautiful. However, when it comes to your neighbor hurting, you should care about your neighbor hurting. You shouldn't be like, that ain't got nothing to do with me. You should care about that. And I just think it would be a big change if we cared about people outside of us. That's all. I hope anything I said today helped y'all. Again, the judge is going to make a decision. And when that decision comes down, I'm assuming it's going to be in a written opinion, probably written already. But they're going to have an opinion soon, obviously, because he goes on October 3rd. Is it October 3rd? I think it's October 3rd he goes for sentencing. So the judge will probably have an opinion soon. And we'll be going over that opinion on what the judge said. But as you guys know, if you guys have been here through the entire live, they were arguing whether he was allowed to make these arguments or whether it was waived under the criminal rules of criminal rules of the federal rules of criminal procedures, whether they are waived, and then also whether this was a First Amendment or ran afoul to the First Amendment or the freedom of speech. Why? Because the man said he was recording it, and he was kind of like an amateur producer, and that if producers of porn isn't going to get hit with a Mann Act, he shouldn't either. The government was basically arguing, listen, it was traveling from one place to another. There was traveling from one spot to the next one. This was prostitution under the Mann Act. That's what it was about, transportation. You are a part of transporting them over here, and that is a violation of the Mann Act. And you did not do it with the intent to record. You didn't record all of them, and it wasn't like a producer who their purpose is, I'm going to this spot, and this is what we're going to do, and that's the purpose. You never told anyone this is your whole purpose, is because I'm about to put it out. And then their argument on the other side was that it was for consumption, and he's just a voyager. So he's a voyeur. So he likes to just look. Likes to look. He doesn't participate. So, and there's no real cases on point because this is a unique situation. Do I think this has been going on for years? Yep. Probably been going on for decades before Diddy. But Diddy was the poster child for this now and for this type of activity. So we shall see what happens. Mark said, it's simple. That you're very passionate, huh? All these caps and exclamation points, Mark. Said it's simple. They seen how Young Miami was getting turned up and they got jealous. It's that simple. You see all them exclamation points. They feel like she was getting more than they got. And Young Miami gave a letter and she said that she didn't get the Diddy that everybody got. And it's possible. It's possible. She got him in his love era. He could have really been trying to evolve to a degree. I mean, clearly it sounds like he was still getting it in with Jane. But he may have had people from that perspective of which he treated better. It happens. Her experiences was not his experience, and people got mad. So, thank you so much, Tracy. Please make sure you hit that like button on your way out and subscribe to the channel, please. Tracy said, I care about the other minority issues because I can see my son or self in their issues most of the time. It's that other group I struggle with. Yeah, because believe it or not, we all just passing through, whether we want to talk about it. And where do you want to leave for your kids? Like, what do you want to, what type of country, if you plan on being here, what type of country do you want to leave for your kids? And so once you get like later on in life, like where I'm at this point, you do, that's what I think about. It's like, how do I want to be the change while I'm here? I got to put in while I'm here my purpose. Everybody has a purpose, and once you find out what that is, put in the work because it helps the next generation. We look at our past uh, people that have affected, like the civil rights movement and all of that. They weren't doing it for them; they were doing it for us. What did Martin Luther King say? I have a dream. I may not get there with you. That was one of the highlights. He knew, even though he was fighting, I may not get there with you. Moses did all of that to let the people go in the Bible, and he didn't get a chance to see the promised land. Sometimes you are the one that is the foundation to make change for the next generation. And so we have to get out of selfishness when it comes to this. We have to stop arguing over dumb stuff. Christianity is so many different faiths out here. You got folks, what it's like, you got Kojic baptized, I think, in Jesus' name. People arguing whether it should be the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. It's so many different people read the Bible in so many different ways. Let's just get back to the basics. We get back to the basics, man, we'll be in a better place. You guys make sure that you hit that like button on the way out. Thank you so much for rocking with your girl. I appreciate all the support. And I'm gonna holler at you guys later.